Wellspring.
Hey, we are live. We're hanging out. We're going to be talking to you guys, creators, broadcasting on this Sunday afternoonish, evening, depending on what time zone you're at. But a very exciting out of the box episode. You know, we don't do lives very often, but this is a special occasion because this is the week of IC3. We've been on the road for months, it feels like now, traveling to this moment right here to talk to this man about this extraordinary event. So we're going to have an hour. We're going to dissect and go into the deep, mysterious, dark thoughts. That is Matt Sardo. Hello, Matt. How are you? How you doing this Sunday?
I'm excited to go into the dark thoughts, man. I'm like, but no, this is actually like this day specifically, as somebody who lived in Chicago and now lives in Connecticut, that spring forward day is amazing. Like the sun is still up and we
Mm-hmm.
have sun for a little bit more. And I'm like, because when the time change hits in Connecticut, it is dark by like 4:45.
Yeah.
So to come out of the darkness and have it be bright and the show is happening next weekend and like knock on wood, do whatever chant you have to, like the weather, I'm definitely knocking on wood now that I said it, but like there might be some nice things going on in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks really pretty that day. That whole weekend looks gorgeous up there. And last year it rained a little bit, and I remember that specifically because I had a hole in my shoe, and I found out like how bad that hole was as I was loading up our stuff, and my sock was getting wet towards the end, and I was like, "This isn't fun." But
Yeah,
yeah, dude.
the last 15 minutes of the show, it started to rain,
Hmm.
and because I was running around picking up signs and everything like that, and then it started to downpour, and, hi, Keith, and then we were running around trying to find some place to go to dinner afterwards, and it was just a monsoon at that point in time, but at that point in time, the show was amazing, everybody was smiling, and, it didn't bother me at all that I was wet.
And I mean, speaking of last year, it was an extraordinary time. A lot has changed in the last year itself with the show, with how we're doing this show. What are some of the biggest differences you feel that are taking place in year two versus year one?
It always goes back to the creators. When the first show happened, and then, I was like, "Okay, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna do it again? We not?" And then, some of my friends, went to Heroes Con, and there was a big rumble at Heroes Con about how cool the show was. And to get that kind of response from people at that kind of show, and then people there were like, "Oh, I wanna get into the show now." That was yes, Jerome, I can't wait for you to, uh, give you a big high five, and you're gonna be my bodyguard. You're my official bodyguard of IC3. Just so everybody knows, Jerome, like, coached the national Canadian, like, karate taekwondo team. So,
What?
yeah.
That's
So
cool.
when he's like, "This book has the best, choreographed fight scene," and I was like, "Who are you to say that?" I'm like, "Well, national coach of the national team of Canada." "Oh, okay. I guess your
Get
your
some
fight scenes
credibility
must be
there. Yeah.
great." So then there was that momentum from Heroes Con, and then I started having conversations with, Kezra from Comic Art Fans about, kind of like bringing IC3 into the fold of comic art fans, and they had their own show, Original Art Expo, that I had kind of kept an eye on because they were starting a show at the same time I was starting a show, a different type of show. But I was like, oh, I know him, and it's interesting that we're starting shows on the same kind of trajectory. And then it was even more interesting when he like messaged me. I was like, "Hey, what's going on, dude?" I was like, "Yeah, dude, what's going on? Because I haven't talked to you in like 15 years." But we're both doing shows, and and then things kind of build from there. And now that I'm the show and I'm officially part of Comic Art Fans, we can do a lot of cool things now. And there's a lot of really cool things going on the horizon. So to then not be doing a show by myself and having a support team, that's a that's a huge lift off my shoulders. And so the stress level of putting on a show is kind of, come down a little bit. I'm still
Yeah.
freaking out stressed because I want to deliver for the creators always. It's always about the creators, and it'll never not be about the creators. And so I'm definitely stressed.
I mean, that's so exciting too, is that you have such a strong vision and you executed it so well on your own the first time. And it was such a blast. I remember being there. It was overwhelming. And I was kind of getting really introduced to the scene at that point and making my own like name throughout stuff. And to see the growth that has happened over the past year and the excitement and the buzz that I've heard at cons and talking to people on these shows and Spilled Ink and Inspired Ink, all the guests we've had on, everyone's either insanely honored and just hyped to be there, or they're just hyping up on how good it was last year and they can't wait to return. Or some people are just sadly disappointed that they can't make it out this year. I haven't heard anything else but just pure love go into this show. And I think it's just the vision you guys have cast upon the indie network, and with comic art fans, that expansion you guys have. It's remarkable what like building, what you did was find your community like we always encourage people to do. Find your community that are going to help execute your vision and what you really plan to do. And so you guys are elevating indie comics like no other. What's the real big standout point? I know as people get bigger, people are just like, oh, is it going to turn into this con or this con? But having a bigger sponsor like Comic Art Fans, or actually owner, now that you guys are partnered up, but like Dark Horse is involved, all these cool sponsors are getting it. What's to stop the con from expanding like other conventions? Are you going to how do you keep it so indie focused, and how do you keep it so driven in the singular direction you have with choosing special guests, all that type of stuff to keep it true to your true purpose?
That's a really good question, and it's kind of multifold. The answer there. I know who I am as a person, and so I know that I can keep things in line for what I personally want to have as a vision, and like how I just generally respect other people and creatives. Like that's a huge thing, and I really enjoy. I've said this. Done a lot of interviews, and so I've said this a lot. I really enjoy being on people's timeline for a hot second, and then watching them grow, and then popping back on their timeline, a few years later or a year later, and then being like, "Hey, dude, I've really enjoyed watching your journey and where you are now. And now that you started, I can't show you in the camera. We started here, and now we're here a year later. I can't wait till a year from now you're up here." And that's really a lot of fun. And that's one of the things that I really take pride in is, not it's not like I'm giving people a chance. They apply, I see their artwork, I check them out, they do everything they need to do to come to the table. All I do is provide a table. That's really all I do. And then they take that opportunity and they do what they want to do with it. And then growing, that's this is where it's going to start, you know, um, getting interesting because now that we're establishing ourselves. Mocha's the same weekend. I did a head count, and I think Mocha and I are like neck and neck with the same amount of creators.
Ooh, that's
I'm
cool.
not gonna say one has more than the other. Don't have a really official head count, but I was like, I counted. I did a rough head count of theirs, and I did a head count of ours, and I was like, oh, we're pretty close. And
Dope.
so that's a cool thing. But when you start becoming, I guess, popular, or well known, people will start coming to the table and wanting to be part of the party, as I would say. And there's gonna be some hard decisions of like, no, I don't want to. I can't. This doesn't fit the vision, and that's where it'll be like tough conversations. I mean, one of the things that I made like a point to is like, I didn't want comic book vendors. You
Mhm.
know, the first year we did, there was the first year we had one vendor, and that's because he ran the only convention in New Haven. And I was like, "You know what? You can have a free spot. I don't wanna ruffle any feathers."
Yeah.
You can and I told him, like, we're celebrating Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the 40th anniversary, and so he's like, "Oh, I'll bring my stuff that kind of fits with what you're doing." And that was a conscious conversation to have with somebody. I was like, "Hey, I'm coming into your territory, and I wanna respect you. So I wanna
Mhm.
offer you a free space to sell at my convention, because I know that you do a lot of hard work in the community. I don't want you to think I'm stepping on your toes." We run 2 completely different type of shows. His
Yeah.
show's amazing. You walk in there and there's so many different toy collector vendors in there, and I think I went in there with my kids, and I spent a whole bunch of money on old DVDs and all this other cool pop culture stuff. It was all really cool, but it doesn't fit what I'm doing with IC3. But that's the thing is every person that comes to has a table at the show, like, I think about that impact of what that voice is that we're trying to show, and those conversations next year, I think, are gonna be really tough because I think we're on the map, and people are gonna wanna be part of the show.
I love that. And so, even considering that, what defines indie for you? Because I feel like indie in itself has become a broader spectrum the more and more we begin to analyze it as creators. You have so-called the big two, which is really like the big three if you kind of toss image in there with being one of the bigger markets. And then you kind of have like, if you think of your food pyramid of publishing, you get the big two up here, you got your kind of bottom layers, which are, Dark Horse, let me think of Boom, places like that, Omnipress, and then you have like a little lower level where you're looking at like kind of Mad Cave and publishers along those lines, and then you kind of go right below that, which is like I would even say Cosmic Lion and Apollo and lesser known comics, and then right below there like your real underground creators who are really primarily like doing things on their own, doing their zines and stuff like that. So like where on the spectrum does like indie creator con fall within like indie in the definition of indie? Like what level do you get to where you're not considered indie, or is there a level or is there just something that we kind of use to mask things around?
So my definition of indie is very, very loose, and Jamie Jones hates it. But there have been people that have approached me and have said like, "Hey, is Cosmic Lion indie? They're a publisher and they're in Diamond. Do they lose their indie cred?" And I was like, "No, that doesn't." Because indie's a spectrum, and my definition is if the publisher is paying your health insurance, you're not indie.
Yeah.
If you have to buy your own health insurance, you're indie.
I see that. Yeah. No, honestly, yeah. It's one of the, are you contracting freelance and like trying to make this happen,
Yeah.
putting it all in? That's really what comes down to be. I mean, I would even go as far as saying is, are you making your own books yourself? Are you doing your own projects outside of these larger publishers? And that's where independence comes from. Are you finding independence within your own work? We have Sam McClure coming in with here with in my opinion, I think comics are in a spot very similar to music. Labels don't really matter in music anymore. Brands and comics don't matter anymore. The bands are the brands, or the creators are the brands now. I mean, that's kind of what happens when you start getting into comics in general. You start realizing, am I reading a DC book or am I reading a book because Grant Morrison wrote it? I'm probably reading the book because Grant Morrison wrote it more than anything else at that point. I
Oh,
mean, that variable definition of indie is so positive because it opens opportunities, and it's something that's I wouldn't say debatable in a negative sense, but debatable in finding clarity in what you feel crosses a line between indie and like it really kind of starts switching your vision of what creators in the big two do. They're trying to find a voice, and that's the thing, you've tried to find your audience, and then a lot of these people like James Tynion and whatnot have gone and done independent stuff, and I would even consider that indie at that point, even though it is very successful. It's all his own independent work at that moment.
yeah, it's, indie it's the point of my show is to kind of get rid of some of those labels and some of those clicks and getting rid of all of that click stuff,
Yeah.
so that you can just come into the show, as a consumer and be like, "Oh, this is a welcoming environment." It's part of creating the welcoming environment. Once I start putting classifications on who's indie, who's not indie, all this different stuff, like, you know, I taught this is a conversation that's been had on the back end of like, "Hey, when people submit me their stuff, to show on Instagram, I'm like, and they're like, "Here's all my Marvel DC." Kind of an indie show. You might not wanna, show me your Batman sketches. Show me your original artwork. This is where we highlight stuff. And it's definitely, you know, you have to evolve, you have to, like, grow with that kind of stuff, and it's kind of a learning there's a learning curve to it as well. And those are the pros and cons of being of getting more popular.
Mhm.
At what point does the Indie Comics Creator Con become a sellout because we're too famous? I mean, like,
It's the punk rock definition dilemma,
yeah,
you know? At one point, are is Green Day punk? You know what I mean? Are we still debating that? Like, they consider themselves not, but hey, it's where on the spectrum, like, almost doesn't even matter. It's really like your own, understanding of it. And I mean, creating in itself, spitting out your vision, putting the hours in. At Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, debatably not indie, as successful. They are the Green Day, I would say, of comics. Oh, that's going to spark
but
some
they are the
controversy.
most successful indie title of all time.
Yes,
They have
exactly.
to be.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, exactly, and they had to do that to make room for people like us and to get noticed. Um, Jerome says over here, "India is a home-cooked meal alongside the McDonald's and Burger King of the big 2." Yes, that's beautiful. That is a great we should get that as a quote somewhere, to be honest, and put that in a book. Um,
So we
dude,
don't like
so
Strange Tales from Marvel. We don't like that book. We're not liking that book. It's I'm trying to think of like when there was like cool stuff. Like when Bill Sienkiewicz was doing New Mutants back in the day. Was that indie? I
right,
mean,
it
it
was
was a big
different.
deal.
Shook it
It's
up.
different. Shook it up. Like when McFarlane's like, "Hey, I'm gonna do my own shit," it'd be like all this stuff, all this Marvel way canon that we had, that this is how we draw Mary Jane, this is how we draw Gwen Stacy, this is how we draw Spider-Man, and he's like, "Nope, doing it myself," and then, like, and trying to blow things up. I'm not an indie historian, so, once you get into those, like, needle details, I'm lost,
Yeah,
because I don't my brain doesn't have that capacity to remember all that knowledge. It doesn't. It basically, my brain is really good at creating an event that's welcoming and has like a mission statement to it, for creators, by creators. And that's kind of what we stick to. And, I guess this might be next year's press tour is me defending indie. So I probably should start getting this together.
I mean, and it's the thing about the con too is that not only is it so much creator focus, but it's you're really focusing on comics more than anything. This is a show that we don't have a bunch of excess, I feel, that a lot of other conventions have. And that's the thing we hear the most on the show when we talk to creators on Inspired Ink, on Spotlight, Spilled Ink, is like how conventions can feel overrun and the creators feel like they're just drowned out, or just shoved in a corner and there's no attention. Like people go in there with their wallets and not always thinking about like, oh, I should put this money aside for indie comics, but for Indie Creator Con, people are putting their money aside for comics, for independent comics. Like they go in there with a mission. And I think that's the best thing it's brought back is just finding a show where people can actually like really gravitate towards to be like, I'm a comic book fan. And the truest, purest comic book fans are probably fans of indie comics because that's where you're getting the rawest, craziest, most out of this world material, that goes along the giant spectrum of indie that we were just speaking about. So I think really your con is just comic book based. You're bringing back the love and passion that has been missing so much out of the last few years, and it's become like very corporate, I guess, in the sense where we drowned out the vision of what a true comic con is. But this is finally do it. And I think that's why it's so, I mean, attractive to all of us as creators in general.
Yeah, no, I mean, conventions have evolved, because they want to make money. They're real businesses, they want to make money. And they realize that, like, hey, with all the CW from, 2000 to 2015, like all that superhero stuff, all the different, shows, Buffy, all the different, I don't know what they would call that genre of show, young adult, superhero, sci-fi, horror. I don't know. It was whatever CW was doing.
Yeah.
They created a niche. And now you have all those different shows on every other network has that type of show. And now all those celebrities are coming to conventions, and then you have Marvel doing what Marvel does, and DC doing what DC does, and with their movies, s- and Star Wars Celebration, like that's an insane show. So the convention model has changed, and when I published like my first comic book, I had tables at like Heroes Con, not Heroes Con, but MegaCon and Tampa Bay Comic Con, and I went through that experience of selling a book and just walking around who's who's setting up and displaying at conventions. And I was not connected. I always surround myself with good people. Um, or find myself surrounded by good people. And some people were, you know, at the convention scene in the Orlando, Tampa Bay area, they were print guys, they were art makers, they were doing all this stuff. And we were talking about how to sell on different places and do things and merchandise and all this other stuff. And I just realized that like Artist Alley was just getting smaller and smaller, smaller, smaller. And then also Artist Alley was either mixed with makers, which isn't a bad thing,
Mhm.
which isn't, makers are not bad people, I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. Like they're still artists and creators and they're trying to make things too. Um, but there was just less and less comic book creators in Artist Alley in these shows because the makers were starting to like just be mixed in. They were just like, there is no Artist Alley, there's just a maker, there's just like the art gallery area. And it's a
Mhm.
different concept. But like if you're trying to sell a comic book and you have to fight against, the person who's selling dragon eggs, which my daughters all have 3 dragon eggs from the past Terrificon. I mean like my money is now gone because I just bought all the dragon eggs and now I can't spend it on the comic books. But those are the things that you come through. So when you come to a comic book show, like Indie Comic Creator Con, like you're gonna come out with comic books because that's what people have and that's what people are selling and there's artwork and stuff like that, like original artwork. But yeah, it's just that I saw a niche within a niche within a niche, and I was like, what this is what creators want. And so I made it and creators have responded.
And I mean, it's kind of crazy because just the way cons are described, especially in this conversation, it's almost like indie creators are creating their own tribe because they're fighting against the tribe of like the art print people and the crafts people and the larger publishers and the people who just do game stuff and dice and things like that. Like we're constantly like fighting them off into these conventions that we thought that were for us, and so it's just like a breath of fresh air being like, there is hope, there is more out there. And especially the people showing up to this podcast right now. Daniel Goodwin says, "What is indie?" Should be one of the 5 questions at the end of this. What is indie podcast? Yeah, honestly, yeah, I love that.
It's What is Comics Podcast.
But yeah,
That's
we're
the
gonna
podcast.
switch it back up now. Redefine it, rebrand. Artie Murphy Art, can't wait for next week. Artie, hey, we're tabling right next to each other, dude. I'm so hyped. And
So
Doomdays, Rick.
RD is a perfect example.
Mhm.
He went around the first show just showing off his book, and this is his first show. I think it's his first show tabling. Yeah.
Oh, dang. Oh, man. Hey, dude, we will show you the ropes. Super hyped. I love RD Murphy. He's so great. I can't wait to get one of my prints from him. Rick Lopez over here says the endless fan art junk is always such a turn off at shows for me. Cannot wait for next week. This is the exact show we've needed. Daniel Goodwin, haha, oops. I mean, it all happens. Yeah, dude. Rick, I mean, we've all been in there in the trenches trying to figure out like how to do stuff. Like I've told the story at Heroes Con. I was next to a craft person and then the Cuberts and then Jimmy and Amanda Palmoni were right there. And like nobody cared about indie comics where we were at. We struck out hard that weekend, but we had fun because of friends. But I mean, it's one of those things like it makes the battle harder because all of us are standing there, with our comic in a giant stadium, shouting at the person at center stage, being like, buy my comic, check this out. And it's even harder to break through when you have these mesmerizing craftspeople, and they are talented, they are wonderful. It's just finding, separation of church and state, I guess. You know what I mean? Is one of those things. We gotta like find the barrier and like find these moments where we could actually find success as creators. Because I know it could get discouraging too. Being out there and finding a way to sell your book and you can't. Um, Rick Lopez, such a whack crutch. Last thing, the big two needs are artists churning out free advertisements for them. I mean, it's very true. Yeah. So finding the future of IC3, they're the biggest thing we always hear is when can we get a West Coast convention? And I'm sure you've been asked this dozens and dozens and dozens of times on the landscape of this. But what hints, what hope can you give these West Coasters, Northeasterners, Southeast people, Southwest people? I'm from the Southwest. I should have said that. Um,
Mario Cow from Brazil on Friday. He's going to be at the show. I think he lives in Long Island now, but he's from Brazil. Uh, he swayed me to have the next IC3 in Brazil, and I was like, I want to do
oh
that.
man, that's kind of cool. Get
He's
us
like,
all to travel.
he's like, "The indie scene in Brazil is obscene," and he's like, "You should go down there and do a show." And I was like, "Yeah, totally do that. I'll figure out how the government works. Who I need to, make it happen. I mean, if they have the Olympics there, we should have an
Yeah.
indie show there. I mean, it's fine. I'm sure there's an empty venue from the Olympics that I could borrow."
Just the hurdles just all lined up for tables. I would love that. Dude,
It's
that'd
just
be sick.
yeah,
Inter
but no, I've had conversations with Ezra and Bill and the team at CAF, and, we want that to happen. I just want it to happen right,
Right.
and so
And it's just
that's
you guys are so new and fresh, like, we gotta test out a couple it's like getting married too fast, I guess, you know what I mean? You wanna go for a couple years, date a little bit,
so the
and
big
make
thing
sure
that
it's
we do
solid.
have, is we have with the room one of the reasons why I wanted to partner and join with CAF and bring IC3 their ve under their umbrella and be part of the company is they have 2 shows a year called Comic Art Live. They're virtual shows, where, every IC3 creator gets a free booth at the show, and they can, show their artwork, they can show their books, and, they can offer commissions, and this is a way for indie creators to make money sitting on their couch in their underwear, doing absolutely nothing. Just setting up a virtual gallery, and I'm hoping that this year we'll have more indie panels because they're live streams as well. Last year we had 1, and I think, last year we had about 20. I had, like, 7 days to put together creators for a you know, a section for the November version of Comic Art Live, and I think we got 26 creators in there.
Ooh,
I think Ken Landgraf sold a ton of stuff.
oh, that's cool.
Because he was in there, and I think some other people did some commissions, and I think that was the first time we heard of Stingray, and I saw Stingray had the first comment, so I can't wait to hang out with Stingray again at IC3. He was at OAX, heard about IC3, he's flying up, um, and so there's a group from the CAF groups that are coming up, and I'm excited to hang out with those people as well because, the original art market is pretty amazing, and then to kind of bring the original art market dollars into the indie scene is even more amazing, and I appreciate everybody supporting all the indie creators that they have supported because, like, it makes a huge difference. You mentioned, like a big 2 creator that is, under contract and is well established and, you know, getting a commission from them does pretty well, but, like, doing giving a $300 commission to a indie creator will probably go a lot farther and mean a lot more. Excuse me. Um Yeah, I don't know if
And
I answered
so
your question.
I don't know, that was a good dance around. It was a perfect answer to, like, answer without answering. I loved it. And so, I mean, the second part of that is, I mean, kind of establishing relationships here, how we were just saying, like, finding slow growth. Is it finding a way to see how you work it out for a 2-day and then see if that's successful enough, and you look at the numbers and you look at the interest and then see if you could, carry it on in, like, 2 or 3 years in another location, versus is that kind of like your overall game plan, I guess creators could kinda hope for is, "Let's test things out, let's water it," instead of rushing in and maybe crashing or, going too deep in our pockets that we might not be able to successfully do.
Um, Let me think about how to answer that one correctly and professionally. Because before, last year, I was punk rock and I was doing indie shows, I can say whatever I want, but now I'm part of a team and I gotta think about what I say, and,
I feel that. It's like when I do these shows versus Apollo, I get it. Yeah, don't worry.
I don't know if I'm losing is it we doing Back to the Future and you're slowly fading out of existence?
Oh, is that like I think it's my lighting? Is that
Yeah,
better?
no, it's your lighting,
Okay,
it's
my
your
my
lighting.
camera was weird. Yeah, the sun's coming through. My cat opened the curtain a little bit, and
I was
it
like,
just
"Is your
got
brother
right on my
going back
camera.
in time? Like, is he screwing up the timer?"
Just so slowly becoming a urethral. That'd be amazing. Right before the show too.
Yeah,
Um, slow
but
growth.
no, so that's one thing. So what work does the New Haven show, and I'll say New Haven show because we do have plans to expand. That is a hard yes that we want to expand the show. Does the New Haven show work as a one-day show? Like, is that where it's supposed to be? And those are quite we're gonna ask lots of questions. Like, I mean, like, I know that, like, this is a marathon and I'm in sprint mode and we're gonna have our show this Saturday, but the next Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, the team at CAF, Kezra, I, Bill, Matt, Tatiana, we're gonna and Colin. Don't want to forget Colin. Colin is solid for me. You know, we're gonna have a long conversation about like what do we think works. Does IC3 in New Haven work as a 1-day show, or does it work as a 2-day show, or does it work as a 2-day show where some people sign up for a table for 1 day for a Saturday, and some people sign up for and it's theoretically 2 1-day shows back to back.
Hmm. I
You
love that.
know? Yeah, so, like,
I mean,
we have
festivals do that. Like when we were Young
right,
Fest, dude, I mean, that's a killer show right there. You know what I mean? Same bands, 2 days, 2 different days, same thing. I mean, that's doable.
right. I mean, that was, we turned off registration after 300 applications, for 135 spots, so, what if we kept those applications going and we got, 400 or 500 applications, and then we're like, "Hey, we have a 1-day show on Saturday, 1-day show on Sunday, and which one do you wanna be for?" And then get some headliners for both days, and if you wanna stay for both days, you can. If you don't wanna stay for both days, like and you kinda keep it fresh and so that you make sure that people come back and you can have more panels and all this other stuff. So, like, those are kind of the ideas that we're kinda thinking about right now.
And then real fast before we answer this, oh, actually, I'll ask it right after this. But would it be great to have little IC3 pop-ups in various places? Can be as simple as a meetup or the bar with you guys promoting it from Daniel Goodwin. I mean, I guess it's just starting your own fight clubs across the country is basically what you'd be doing at that point. And that's basically gonna be Tyler Durdening it and just traveling to each one, setting up a little mini IC3 event. That would be cool. I mean, I think that's something that, even as a collective executing and just representing and making sure there's good representation is what would need to happen from the community. I guess you guys would have to have like an advisor for some of those events, or like these are our rules and whatnot, or how you're associated or not associated with stuff like that.
One of the ideas that I was pitching and trying to figure out how to make it work is, like, to get an IC3 shelf at a comic book shop
Hmm. Oh,
and then
cool.
start listing the different shops that have IC3, shelves. And
Hmm.
then once you have that, then you could possibly set up signings at those shops of the creators in the area that wanna do that. And
Yeah.
it's those are the things that I have experience with running a store to where, I think you can do that successfully, and you could help the store out, you can help the creators out, and it could be a win-win. But I've also, again, promoting the IC3 brand, promoting the Original Art Expo brand, Comic Art Fans, and Comic Art Live. I We now have a whole bunch of brands that need to get promoted. I know that I will be at New York Comic Con. Like, I'm sure that there's a way for us to do something at New York Comic Con,
Hmm.
or I'm sure that Jamie Jones will be at Heroes Con, and I'm sure he doesn't want any more work from me, but maybe he might be able to put something together. I mean, so we have there's people that I trust. And Eli will be, in California and maybe the LA whatever, I think it's the LA Comic Con, or I don't know exactly what the big Comic Con out is there, but maybe he can, like I'll be like, "Hey, let's, here's some drink and draw coasters." Like, IC3 branded, and I'm just thinking out of the box right now. None of this is, but, like,
Yeah.
maybe we
Yeah.
can have a drink and draw over there. I'll send some swag to Eli, and he can host a party, and, like, Wesley Griffith is up in who's at Emerald City Comic Con right now,
Oh,
like,
right. Yeah.
maybe we could do a drink and draw there or something like that, where it's
Or
basically,
even like Apollo, we're this week, we're
yeah,
going to be at my local shop, Four Color Fantasies, which was the Image Comics Select Realtor award winning shop. Really cool. But I forgot how it was phrased. But we're just doing it like I'm just basically promoting, hey, this is the road to IC3. I'm promoting IC3. I'm promoting my team at Apollo, me, Javi Martinez, Kai Brown, this Wednesday at Four Color Fantasies here in Winchester, Virginia. But that's how I kind of co-branded it, was like, I'm doing this event, I'm going to IC3, and this is my journey. So I kind of included you guys in on the branding and marketing of it all, letting it be known as like an IC3 event, but it's me participating in IC3 to bring acknowledgement. And I think if we saw more of those pop up around the country, that would show our, excitement, show people's excitement, their interest and capabilities of what we could do to better broadcast a bigger event, or even know where bigger events should take place.
yeah. I do know that, like, we wanna push the envelope on this, and we wanna, like, bring this to places that it needs to be.
Yeah.
Again, it's just trying to figure out the right way of doing it. And you're gonna need a point person in that area that knows the people, knows the situation, knows, what the locals like. I mean, that's my learning curve here is, the first show, I didn't know that many Connecticut, New England locals. After the show, I know more people and I know more schools and colleges and high school teachers and all those different places to invite students to the show. Because another aspect of it is it is this like hybrid convention conference where I want creators that aren't tabling to come as well and like go to panels, network, come to drink and draw, come to the after party and like just meet people because that's our huge aspect of being successful in the comic book community landscape of, selling and doing all this stuff is like getting out there and being seen and shaking hands and be like, here's my comic book. What do you think? And they're like, this is awesome. Or this could need some work. Or, like finding people that can like talk critically about your work in a positive way
Yeah.
is a really tough task to find because everybody usually just gives you the attaboy, but like you need criticism on your work,
Yeah. Yeah.
positive criticism, be like, hey, you might need to work on your word balloons or like your perspective is off, or maybe don't print in color. Maybe your book should be in black and white. I mean, like
Yeah.
until your skill level comes up or whatever.
I mean, that's such a cool thing it is a one-day show too, because it adds some exclusivity to like people shopping, knowing like I have only today to see a bunch of these creators. I only have today to get these items. And I think that helps boost sales is knowing like there's that strained tension that I can't come back tomorrow. I don't have time for second thoughts. I may be able to look around right now, but that's gonna end, and who knows if this is gonna be there. I think it just brings so much more. And especially the way it's set up this year, everything's so well collected. I think people shopping and just people looking to network. I mean, especially if you're a creator that's not tabling at the show, there's no reason for you not to just show up to the show. Like you said, RD Murphy wasn't tabling, and dude, RD's killing it this year. Like I've had many conversations with the dude. I love having him on Spilled Ink. I love seeing where his art's going, and he's such a big part of the community. And he's dipped into various communities. He's dipped in with lesser known comics. He does a lot with like Comics Wellspring programming. He's like with his own people up there, and he hangs out with like Evan McGuire. Which real fast, I'll even broadcast this. Evan McGuire did our art on the High Adventures of Weed Wizard and a Bong Boy, which you could exclusively find the violet purple foil print at IC3 at the Apollo booth. Thank you, Evan McGuire. But him and RD were buddies, and that's how I'm like, oh dang, I can't believe he's even connected with them. And just broadening your network brings so many good positive opportunities. So like because of that, all those things connected, now I know I'm tabling next to RD. Like I want to make sure he has a good time and like knows the ropes and to help him out and to like make sure everything's set. You kind of like take in creators, experienced creators kind of take in younger creators to make sure that they do it well. And you only do that by networking and going to these shows and participating and meeting all of us. So it's key to just show up no matter what I feel.
I'm really getting behind this, like shaking hands, kissing babies, kind of old school, getting to it because like social media is going to be what social media is. I don't know what the life
Mhm.
expectancy is or where it's going to go or how it's going to evolve. You know, uh, the newsletter, email newsletters are making a comeback. But even like Gmail throttles
Like
those and
mine,
put 'em.
you could check out my Substack. Make sure to check out Apollos. That's our link tree to
But no,
subscribe.
they, like, put them in the promotion folder, Gmail puts
Mhm.
them in the promotion folder, so it's like, even that gets throttled, so, I mean, like, the bands that I support most are the bands that I've seen in person,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's so that's from my experience, and same thing with, like, some of the creators that I've, like, met at the different shows or come to my store or I've met, this is I'm at a different level of create like, comic book creators now because, like, I've held the show and, I've met over, 400 creators, indie creators, so I can't really be like, "Oh, everyone I've met, I've supported." I'm like, "Well, that's not true." It's just we're at an obscene level. So, music is the one where I can talk the most about. Is every, like, small musician that I've seen, I've kept supporting if their work has matched my personality and stuff.
I mean, and you're supporting them by putting them in the show too, I would
Right.
say you've done so much support. I mean, even for Apollo, like I feel like you've supported Apollo in such a great ways, and I'm lucky to be in the show and part of it. And you made my life way easier by putting both my jobs together, so I don't have to run around two sides of the convention from Apollo to CWS. So thank you on that. It really, really saves me on some
And next
legwork.
year, man, I'm gonna put you guys so far away.
Just like one ballroom to the other. I'm just gonna cry. But it's one of those things like just supporting the way you do does so much for everybody who's there. You know, the exposure they get. Dude, I mean, I was lucky to be part of it last year just by doing like live material for CWS, and I met Tony Wolf. And I think that's really where I got to meet like Rick Lopez and Cosmic Lion, and now we're buddies and everything. Like I love seeing those dudes, especially Rick at shows and whatnot. Like IC3 really did throttle a lot for me and my comic book journey, and it put me in such a good, I guess, spot mentally and faith in the community. I didn't realize how cool it was going to be. And also, like, I mean, especially this year, for example, just to put in scope for you what this does for people. Apollo got really big creator wise in the last year and a half. We were it was very beginning publisher, but this is going to be the first time at this IC3 we have so much of the team together. And I'm going to get a little emotional knowing that we have Eric Allred and Ben Collins and Tanner and Evan and my Alex is going to be running the booth, and then we have John, and we have so many creators that are it's half the team of Apollo that it's like, dude, none of this existed last year. And now to have them all here in one spot that I haven't met half of them in person, and now I finally get to. And then you add on all the people we've had on Spilled Ink, on Inspired Ink that I've interviewed and hung out and drawn with, and I'm going to meet in person. Like, I'm literally going to be crying the entire time. I'm just going to be super hyped to see everybody. The new Coheed album comes out the day before, so that's even more hype. Like, it's such
Oh,
a
man.
yeah, I know I'm super excited, dude. I'm super got that pre-order. But it's one of those things like a con like this just it hits people like in a really great way, and it does great stuff for us. And it's hard to like explain until you take a step back and look at your career as a creator, and even you as a con creator. Which sounds weird and not like in a negative con sense, but a convention creator. But it's so great, and I think it's what indie needs and what's missing. And I think it's integral to where we're all going and to find futures. And we kind of owe you for that, which is
No,
crazy.
no, not at all. It's it's one of the things I've been thinking about this for just a little bit, now that, like, I'm part of CAF and the show is under CAF, is that, um, this wasn't an easy journey for me. Like, it definitely, like, took a very long time to get to this point, and I'm very excited about the future. But, like, I had a lot of trial and error had to happen before I
Oh
got
yeah.
to IC3, and, from owning a comic book shop to, doing, like, pop-up shows to running Monkeys Fighting Robots to, like, running, a small comic book shop when I was 16 in the back of my parents' video store, like, to doing, like, crazy shit like that, and then, like, doing doing cons, like going to the Howard Johnson's on the first Friday of the month and bringing my long boxes and doing all that stuff and traveling to White Plains, doing all those things. Being at the last Wizard World and figuring out how to do a booth with my store and all these different things. Like just so many like trial and errors and falling on my face to like get to this point. And the first show was tough. It was definitely tough to pull off, and all the creators, like I said, that Heroes Con where Jamie's like, "Hey, dude, they're talking about the show," and I was like, "Oh shit, like this is cool. We might have done something." And then to get the message from Ezra that's like, "Oh, you did do something," and I was like, "Oh, and we're gonna keep doing it." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And that was one of the important parts of like partnering with CAF and joining CAF and bringing IC3 under the fold is that like it's more the legacy thing. Like that if I
Yeah.
like if for some reason I'm not around, I know that CAF will take care of IC3. And they have and this was a big conversation that Kezra and I had was like Kezra's more indie than I am. Like he is an indie guy. Like he like he is way more indie than I am. Where I'm a big 2 nerd and all this other stuff and I've grown into indie and I have my shelves are full of indie comics from friends and all the other people I've enjoyed. But like I'm a huge big 2 nerd.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, same. That vibes. I
yeah,
get that.
but, like, that was the whole reason why I wanted to join with them is that, like, I knew that he believed in the same thing that I believed in, and it wasn't going to change
Yeah.
even if I left. I knew it wouldn't change. Like, he knows my vision. and we've talked about it, and he's talked about his vision, and those 2 visions align.
Mhm.
And so I feel confident that if I'm not around, that, like, the torch will be carried and the show will keep going. And that was really important to me to make
I mean,
sure that
that's great too. Like,
yeah.
is that even like in the sense of like you feel like you can only do this for a few years? You know, this is where we get to the deep, dark,
No,
part of Matt
no, no,
Sardo,
this
where
is
he
definitely not like but, life happens. You don't
yeah,
know,
yeah, hmm
like, life happens, and, but I wanted to make sure that this was in a place again, I my job is to take care of creators,
yeah.
and so that's this is one way of me taking care of creators is being making sure that, like, again, if I'm not around, like, it keeps going.
I love that. I mean, you've made it bigger than yourself at that point, and that's the greatest thing you can do. You know, you're really it's all for the community, and that's rare. You know what I mean? And it's like when we bring people on Apollo and they're like, we get to keep all of our work. I'm like, yeah, I don't want it. Like in that sense, like I don't want to own everything. Like publish it. That's great, but like it's yours. It's yours. Flourish. Like we want to see people do this because everyone's success means we find other avenues of success, and then we get to learn things from each other, and then we all find success where it's an uplifting thing, kind of root up and knowing how hard comics are in the history of comics and how badly every creator that we love and adore has been screwed over in one shape, form, or another. We're just trying to give you an outlet and a spark of hope that it's not all bad, that there's a lot of people that do care and do love your work and do think you could do great and to just make art. I think that's the biggest thing too. I mean, the world is wild right now. Doesn't matter what direction you look in, there's something going on. And with social media and the immediate intake of everything, slowing down and reading a funny book is probably the best thing you could do, or just pausing and just reflecting and making art is probably one of the most positive things you could do right now. And you were kind of encouraging that, and we're going to continue encouraging that no matter what happens in the world. And it's a good escape for all of us. It gives us everyone's so hyped in the chat right now. Everyone's been hyped for this whole week. Dude, I just did inventory yesterday. I got a nice little pile of everything I'm super excited about. Like, I mean, people are promoting things they've been working on for the past year plus at this show. Do you want to talk about any like exclusives on the top of your head aside from this, really cool foil print from the High Adventures of Weakness and a Bong Boy you can find exclusively at the Apollo City Comics booth?
Yeah, let me just pop into my Substack real quick. I knew I should have pulled it up, but I was cutting off monitors for bandwidth to make sure I didn't drop out of the conversation because apparently Sunday night is a big like internet
Yeah,
spend.
I'm gonna turn on
Um
my light. I'm still listening. I didn't realize I was gonna get this dark in this room. 1 second.
but no, we have tons of exclusives coming to Indie Comics Creator Con, March 15th, this Saturday, at Southern Connecticut State University. We got Drink and Draw on Friday. We got an after party that we don't talk about because it's that cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know that like Monty Keene has a bootleg Wolverine coming for the
Ooh,
show.
yeah, that looks cool.
I know that Manny Gomez has I'm gonna call everything bootleg, has a bootleg Bebop and Rocksteady comic book.
That's yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I remember that one. That's a good one.
yeah, I know that Jim Rugg has Alien Disclosure.
Oh yeah, that looks
He
great.
has he has a 24-page drawn with ballpoint pen. Who, what, when, where, why. Oh, Justin Zimmerman. I need to talk like that guy. I actually have something in my hand.
Ooh,
I told you about this one. He has, Battle
sounds
Quest
sick.
comic sampler. It's the 6 cover gatefold cover. It might be taller than Brandon.
Yeah, no, it's
This
definitely
comic book
probably
might
taller
be
than
taller than Brandon, but he has 500 copies. He has 500 copies to give away of this.
yeah,
And it's really cool. It's really good,
dude,
and it
it's
gives a little
epic.
taste of Battle Quest comics. And he's on the northwest side of the country, and I met him at New York Comic Con. That guy is putting together a huge comic book line of books with, like, some insane artists and some great writers. Dean Haspel will have copies of Chessface. That just came out on his he got did that as Kickstarter for. Cosmic Lion has Sons of Pequod.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Ooh, speaking of Cosmic Lion, that looks sick. That looks so sick. I will actually announce right now. I was just texting Eli, and we're doing something special for everybody for the drink and draw and for Saturday as well. This is for all the creators. Him and I teamed up. We're putting together a blank book where everyone's going to be able to draw in a panel. And so we're making a Cosmic Lion Apollo City Comics IC3 blank book, and everyone will it'll get passed to you. We had a bunch of creators map out panels already, but we have a bunch of blank pages. You can start creating panels, but it's going to be a super fun interactive way, and then we're going to try to figure out a way how we can make copies of it and maybe sell it back to you guys, or sell it to the community or give it to the community. We're figuring out that part still, but Eli and I are really hyped to like do this and have everyone contribute and draw in a panel in this fun little book, and we'll get to reflect on it a lot later, and it's gonna be beautiful. I'm really hyped for that.
I don't have it with me, but Jeremy Heiler, he donated to the gift bags, and he'll have copies at his table of WTF. It's about his father's Alzheimer's, and or not his father, his grandfather's Alzheimer's,
Mm.
and the artwork in that book is absolutely batshit insane, amazing. And I talked to him Friday night during the show, and, like, it just blew me away with that book. So, the first 100 people in line will get the gift bag and get the comic book, and we have tons of really cool stuff going on there. Wes is flying in late. But,
We'll get to you Saturday.
yeah, so we got Jeremy Heiler, RD Murphy will have copies of his book, and I think it's
Yeah,
his first time tabling, so he'll have Living Fantasy.
so
And
it's right
then,
next to the Apollo City Comics table and CWS. You'll find RD hanging out right there.
um, Tony Sedina, I really like his work. I don't know if you can see this, but he has
Oh yeah.
Bruised, and that cover looks amazing. But yeah, no, there's tons of exclusive not ex th we use the term exclusive very loosely. There might be
Yeah.
debuts.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Jamie Jones, my buddy, and the guy running the panels, he has a table set up in the panel room, and he has Spacow number 3 that he is
Ooh.
currently stapling together right now. I can confirm that he's putting the book together right now in his office.
What
Um,
tell us about the panels. I mean, last year the panels were really fun. I had a blast moderating one of the panels last year. What are some of your highlights on the panels for us to check out?
oh man, highlights were good. The biggest one for me, I think, is like you have the idea of making a comic book. Like it's making a comic book day one. What do you do from there?
Mhm.
Like what do you and so that'll be that panel too.
Love that.
Um,
Maddie and Jamie Jones are doing one at the end of the day too,
at the end
right?
of one, they're doing the Jamie Mahdi Power Hour where
Yeah.
they're gonna bring in 2 creators or 2 cartoonists, and they're gonna give them a prompt, and they're going to, like, Manning cast it and commentate as the people draw the prompt and stuff like that, and
Is
that'll
that
be
something you would like to do more in IC3? Are these workshops and interactive times for creators, or, and just have more of those type of workshops go on, kind of like what we've seen like at SPX and whatnot too?
Yeah, I think so, and that's why, like, you talk about, like, a 1-day or 2-day show, like, maybe Friday is just, like, workshops,
Yeah.
and it's and then Saturday is a show. Um, so we have a panel with Heather Antos and Mike Martz, editor of
Ooh.
the editor-in-chief of Mad Cave and the senior editor at IDW, and
Mhm.
it's also gonna have, Eli Schwab, and we're gonna talk about tastemakers and what editors are looking for and all those things. Like, that'll be cool, and then, there is, and this is a person I'm excited to meet, Lee Heidel. He owns Neighborhood Comics in Savannah, Georgia.
Yeah.
He's bringing a crew up here,
Great crew.
from SCAD, and
Um,
they're gonna have a panel about pitching to comic book stores.
cool.
'Cause I think that's important is, like, how do
Yeah.
you which because like, the indie scene and when I had my store 2006 to 2011, people would come to me and like, "Hey, can I put my indie book in your store?" And I was like, I didn't really have an indie section. So I was like, "I don't know how I'm gonna sell this." Like, I didn't really know, like, so and there was, and I'm blanking on the name of, the indie comic shop in Chicago, which the owner just sold. Oh, it's gonna kill me. People are gonna hate me for this one. But they were the huge, like, indie shop, and that's all they did was sell indie comics and indie
Oh,
books and all this stuff,
that's
um,
killer.
and so, like, now you need to, like if you're pitching to a comic book shop, you need to know if they, like, sell indie books,
Yep.
and if they're open to it first before you be like, "Hey, do you wanna do this?" I ended up having an indie section because once day one my store opened, comic and I saw that they had content and there was a need for it. So then like we built an indie section and we went
And
from there.
it really does vary from store to store because back in El Paso, the shop I'd go to was really they didn't have the clientele for indie, and it was unfortunate. There wasn't a big splash in like the people that were shopping there, what the shop was known for. They're very much a CGC type of crew and everything, and big too. And then I moved to here to Winchester, and like Four Colors, one of the most welcoming, indie shops. And all of the Apollo books are there, and I'm always directing fans there. In fact, I just sent pictures to Morgan Heron and of John, spacing his last name starts with a B, Barnett, Barrett, Farrell Star. But both their books were at my shop, and I was super hyped to like. I sent them both pictures, and I was like, "Dude, this is at Four Color and everything." And I mean, finding those shops that like will represent indie and proudly showcase them, on the front when you're checking out, and like not just have like a stash code. Burkett, thank you so much, Aaron
I
Lee.
was gonna say it, Aaron. I was waiting for him to stop talking.
It's one of those. It's so cool. Like but you got to find them. You got to hunt them down. And Neighborhood Comics, super great. I've heard great things from Anya Driffel and Kevin Betu, who were on our shows recently. And great group of kids as well. Anya just did a book with Madi, and it's one of the raddest things I've seen. Her art is just catapulted in the last year or so.
Yeah, we just talked with her as well, and I can't wait to meet her because she has a book about her dog, and
Yeah,
I read it like
totally.
5 minutes before our interview, and I was like bawling. I was
Yeah,
just like, I can't handle this, and then I was like, hey, Anya, how's it going? Blah blah. And then Jamie was like, why do you talk about death all the time? And I was like, this is gonna be a rough podcast, but it was a really fun podcast.
it was.
But
It was
no,
a good one.
so but yeah, there's in New Haven, there is Strange Ways, and they're like a just an indie shop.
Hmm.
And I've made connections with them, and we're probably gonna have, like, an IC3 pop-up at their store,
Oh,
later
cool.
on this year. So I already started. I was like, "Hey," because he has a space where he does have pop-ups all the time, all
Hmm.
different teams and all different makers, and I was like, "We probably should have" like, I think he has spots for, like, 6 people and stuff, and so I told him, like, "Come to the show and just give me a list of creators, and we can make a pop-up happen, at your
Yeah.
store." But I think he also has, like I was gonna talk to him about, like, a section for, like, indie books because I think he has books and he has, like, a couple I think some zines and stuff like that, but, uh, but I think he could re he I think indie books, like, what they're producing at IC3 would sell really well at his shop, and those will be conversations that I'll have with him as well because guy the owner of the shop, and like he blogs about it and vlogs about retailing and the trials and errors of retailing and of being like an indie. He's lots. You can go in there and pick out patches and get them put on your like
Oh, cool.
jacket and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And they have like custom patch people and like the whole entire store is like it's just all random stuff from random makers. T-shirts and books and prints and all this stuff. So, like, comic books would fit perfectly in his shop, and he doesn't know it, but I'm gonna make sure that there's a section in his shop.
Well, that's the key thing to finding, places to, sell your work that may not have been what you first thought of. It's like when you con at places that aren't Comic Cons. You go to your art fairs, you go to your horror conventions, you try to find a niche within your niche that you're making towards stuff, and you're like, we could fit in here. Like we're trying to get, some of our books in like head shops and everything because that's where Zap Comics started off, and it fits our line and some of the books we offer. So like finding those outside places that like you could actually benefit, dude. Like this, so elevate your shop. Talk to business owners and learning how to talk to business people to find these avenues. I think that's the next step that Indie's going to start taking to really take over the stands again. I mean, if DC could have Dollar Tree, I mean, we could take on over these mom and pop shops across the country and really make an impact too. It's all part of the ecosystem, I guess, that we're kind of rebuilding and rebranding as indie creators and forefronters. But
Yeah,
dude,
whatever your niche is. I mean, like, if your book is sci-fi, like, you should be at every sci-fi convention possible selling it, and I do my book is Monkeys Fighting Robots, and I've always thought if I had the time, like, I should be at every, like, gamer anime show.
yeah,
Because it just kind of fits in with what the theme is, and you might just hit a brand new audience that, like, never would have expected to see your stuff there, but they're like, "Oh, this really clicks with me."
yeah, honestly.
So, I
Um,
mean, I love my indie show, but, like, you probably should, like, find other shows.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the growth, and then you spread word about IC3, and then that's where the growth comes from. Wes Griffin, I once entertained this weird idea of leaving copies of issue 1 of The Jump, which is a comic about a car trouble at a Jiffy Lube waiting rooms. Dude, that is brilliant. Like that is where you got to market your stuff. I love it. Well, Matt, I am slowly blending into my chair and background because it got real dark in my room. And we've hit our hour mark of hanging out, diving into your psyche, understanding the deep, dark thoughts of Matt Sardo as we lead into this wonderful, amazing con that is IC3. I am so hyped. I'm so excited that that you're doing this, and I'm going to see you. I'm going to see all these creators. Do you have any final words before we sign off on this?
Well, I know somebody mentioned it that we're gonna make it to the panels. I'm gonna post all the panels on YouTube, so everything will be up there. We wanted to make panels that would last longer than just the show, so that,
Nice.
they'll be evergreen and be on the YouTube channel. But, the big thing is just if you are within driving distance, get your butt to Indie Comics Creator Con. It's next Saturday, March 15th. It's St. Patty's Day weekend. It's gonna be a killer weekend to begin with. The weather looks nice. We got 175 plus creators coming to town with amazing stuff. I mean, I've talked to so many creators and seen what they're doing, and I'm really impressed with the lineup that we have there.
Like
Yeah,
this
well,
foil poster of the High Adventures of Weed Wizard and Bong Boy. You can find it in the Apollo City Comics group. Like that. Thank you, Evan McGuire.
everybody's invited to drink and draw the after party. Go to indiecomicscreatorcon.com to get your tickets, and that's it, man. We're just gonna have a great time, and I can't wait to hang out with you again. And there's gonna be so many people I'm gonna see again for the second time, so many people I'm gonna see for the first time. There's gonna be lots of emotions, lots of hugs. Hopefully, everybody leaves the show jazzed to make their next comic book.
So hyped, so excited. And then Comics Wellspring, I'll do a quick promo. It's our show. We're gonna be giving samples of our blue line paper to all creators at their tables. We're gonna be raffling off 2 packs of blue line paper. I've got a really cool spinner wheel. You get to spin it, and there's one grand prize winner who's gonna get a pack. We have some other goodies and whatnot, and then you get enter a raffle, and then you get to win a pack, and we'll mail it out to you so you can have your next set of blue line paper to start your next book. Come say hi to me and Jacob at the CWS booth, which is right next to the Policy Comics booth, which is right next to RD Murphy. So there's no reason why you shouldn't come say hi to all of us. I am so excited. We're currently doing our road to IC3 with Javi Martinez and Eric Allred and Anton Blake and Lex Castellon. And I'm so excited that we're doing 4-Color Fantasies on Wednesday. And then we'll be at the show Friday hanging out with you all. Come say hi, please. I'm so excited to see everyone we've talked to and interviewed with. It's going to be a great time. And I got a dolly. That was my lesson that I learned from cons. I have a dolly now. I strained my wrist at Baltimore by carrying a box up 3 blocks, and it hurt. I'm old now. It sucks. So we'll end the show there. Thank you, Matt, for your time. Thank you all for tuning in and hanging out. This has been an amazing, awesome way to spend a Sunday evening. So thank you guys.
Bring your comics with Comix Wellspring.